Some people on our YouTube and our TikTok were wanting me to do a how-to video on how I made this shim jig sled here. So I'm going to show you a quick little video on how I put it together. So all you need is just a few scrap pieces of wood. I used a piece of 3/4 inch plywood for the base. I used also a piece of 3/4 inch plywood to cut the handle out of. And I've got two little blocks here to attach here to hold the material down. All I did was get my tape here on my handle, and I held the tape up here to round this side off, and then where it meets up over here, round it down, and then line it back up and curve it the opposite way. Cut that out with my jigsaw. After I cut that out with my jigsaw, I took my router with the 1/8 inch round over and just rounded it over all the edges just to make it nicer to hold on to. So whenever you're adding this part here on the bottom, you want to make sure that it's sliding in here good. You want it tight, but you don't want it so tight that it's not going to slide. So whenever it's attached to the bottom of my sled, it's just barely sitting off the bottom. It's not actually all the way down. As you can see, there's a little bit of spacing there, and it's sliding pretty good. So to mark out the holes for my handle, I used a 1.25 inch bit here. So I cut me a block 1.25 inches by 3.5. That's how wide this is. And I just kind of use it to gauge, where I want it. And then I just mark it out. And then I line up my drill bit, drill it out, use my jigsaw to cut that out. I'm going to show you guys real fast here in a minute how I put all this together. So the first thing you're going to do is start with your base here. There's no specific measurements or anything that I'm using here. I'm just lining it up with this groove, putting a couple marks on it so I can know where I need to put this at. And actually, as you can see here, it's actually a little bit longer. I made it a little bit longer on purpose, so when I'm running it through here cutting shims, it sticks out a little bit in the front here and I could see it, and it's easier for me to line it up with this groove right here when I'm cutting shims. And see how when I set this on here, I went ahead and set it up to where it cuts this off. So when it cuts this off, I know that the blade's going to be cutting square with it. So here I'm going to show you how I marked out my handle. See right here, I just simply measured 1.5 inches from here to here, just as some kind of reference line, just so I have a little bit of meat on my handle when I'm running it through there. Just remember, keep it simple, guys. See, that'll make it a little bit easier to hold on to. See right there, I just eyeballed it and tried to center it up to the left side of this other block that I have on the bottom here. So after you got your handle on here, you got your piece on the bottom, you can go ahead and run it through the saw. Go ahead and cut this excess side off here. So now by cutting that excess side off, we have the blades going to be cutting square with our jig. So I like my shims to be 5/16 thick at the back here. So all you have to do is measure down the length of your shim and then add in right here at the back the thickness that you want your shim. So I'm going to set this one up for an 8-inch shim. I'm going to measure over 5/16 right here for the back. I'm just going to simply tape a shim to this side, and I'm going to tape this to the bottom so it's even, and just run it through the saw, and where the shim's on this side, it's going to offset this thing just a little bit, and it's going to cut this shim pattern out right here. I'll show you. All right, so the next thing is we're going to put these little blocks on here to hold your material down. So now we're ready to cut shims. Let me get this cleaned up here and I'll show you.
3 hours later.
Just cut an 8-inch block for your 8-inch shim jig. You're ready to start cutting shims. Perfect shim every time.